Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. The Photoshop paste into technique is something I've demonstrated before, but it is enormously versatile, especially as a presentation technique for Pictures to Exe. For audiovisual enthusiasts who are looking for a slightly different presentation effect, then this could be for you. We do need to use Photoshop's layers to prepare our artwork, but modern Photoshop makes that very easy, even if you don't have any layers experience. In fact, the paste into technique is a great layers learning project for those who do wish to become better acquainted with Photoshop's layers. We start by creating a series of shapes on a new blank canvas. Then we can paste images into those shapes. It's a great way to create a triptych too. The key to this technique is to try to visualize what you want to happen in your slideshow within Pictures to Exe, but create the plan for it in Photoshop's layers. Now it sounds a lot worse or more difficult than it actually is, so let me show you what I mean as we go through the layers preparation. So as you can see, I've cleared the screen in Photoshop. I'm going to leave the layers showing on the right hand side. I think that's going to be useful. We need a new blank canvas at the size of the slideshow we're going to make. So I'm going to go to File, New. There's one that I've made earlier, which is 1920 by 1080. We can see the values on the right. The color of the canvas isn't vital, but white is going to be good, so let's create it. Now I'd like to create a thin border around the outer edge of my artwork that's going to be retained for all of the slides in my slideshow. And one of the ways we can achieve that is by first bringing our rulers onto the screen, and then from within the rulers we can drag out guides. Now the rulers can be brought on screen with a simple and easy to remember shortcut, Ctrl R, but you'll find them in the View menu. There they are, and there's a reminder of the shortcut. We can change the rulers or the measurement by just right clicking and choosing anything we want. But I want about a 50 pixel border here. But I found one of the easiest ways to achieve that is by creating yet another blank canvas. Let me explain. Or I should say, demonstrate it. Let's go to File, New once again. What I'd like to do here is to create myself a little tiny square, 50 pixels by 50 pixels. Now I'm going to select a different color. We'll have black as the color and we'll create it. Now you probably know that you can copy and paste that into our original canvas, but we can also drag and drop it. If I just drag out that tab for a moment, there's my little square, and I can drag it on and close this down because I don't need it. What I'm going to do is to move this into the top left corner. As I do, notice all of these little guides that pop up, and when I go to the corner it snaps into place. I get it perfectly placed in the corner without any difficulty at all. Now that's because in the View menu I've got the snap command turned on. So if that snap doesn't work for you, come into your View menu and just click the snap so the tick appears and we're away. Now look what happens when I click into the upright rulers and drag out a guide. When I get to the edge there, it just snaps into place. This one, whoops, beg your pardon, I just dragged that from the top. This one, drag out a top guide, snaps back into place. Move the little square to the bottom right corner and we can do exactly the same. Within seconds we've got a beautiful 50 pixel border guide around our artwork. Now we're unlikely to need that little square anymore, so let's just delete that layer. I've just highlighted the layer and hit delete. But what we probably should do at this stage is to start saving this as a project. So we need to save this probably at this stage as a Photoshop file, and we need to save it into the folder where we're going to be making our slideshow. Now if you look up at the top left of the screen at the little tab with the name on it, you'll see that I've done this, calling it Artwork 001, because there's a good chance as we go through the process that you're going to want to make more than one of these. But generally speaking, we can make the next one from this one. You'll see what I mean as we go along. The next stage is to create the basic shape of the images within our slideshow, and we've already got that marked out because we've got the guide in place. But what I want to do is to create a shape within this guide on a new blank layer. So as we go through the process, there's going to be one or two shortcut keys that I tell you about. So if you haven't already got just a piece of paper and a pen lying close by, do so, because these are going to be useful. I'm going to go to my toolbox and pick up my rectangular marquee tool. Now because we've got that snap command turned on, look what happens if I go close to the top left corner and click and drag. It's very quick and easy to make a selection which snaps to my 50 pixel guides perfectly. Now I need to flood that shape, that selection, with, let's choose black. As I said, it's not important the colour we use, but black's a good colour to work with white in this circumstance. So I need to flood that selection with black, but not on this layer. I need to create a new blank layer. Now we can do that by going down the bottom of the layers palette. There's the layer. I'm going to use shortcuts to fill that selection with colour. Alt backspace will flood my foreground colour. Control D will remove the selection, and there you can see what we have. And something you may want to do each time we make a change is hit Control S, because that's going to save over the top of your previous artwork, until of course we get to the stage where we want to rename it and move off at a different tangent. Now we're into creative territory. So what I'm going to suggest we do is just follow our nose basically. I'm going to try to create some shapes which would form quite an attractive presentation within my slideshow. I'm going to pick up that marquee tool once again, and I'm going to click and drag to make a shape. Now one of the things when we click and drag to make a selection, particularly in this scenario, we don't always get the shape exactly perfect. So I know many people would clear the shape and draw another, and if that's not right, get rid of that and try again. But in actual fact, probably the better way of doing this is to just draw any old shape, then go to your select menu at the top of the screen. After all, we're working with a selection, so select, transform a selection. You'll see that familiar bounding box around the outer edge. Now I can move this around, and you'll see that the smart guides are telling me the shape that I've just placed is now perfectly square in the center of my picture. I've got the opportunity to make it bigger or smaller, whatever I want to do. Click inside and get it lined up again. You can see how quick and easy it is to get that square right in the center. Then what I'm going to do is to just hit the little tick and commit that change. What I want to do here is to cut a hole out of that black inset there, but then paste it back because we're going to use that too. So if we use Control X, we can use Edit Cut from the menus up above and then Edit Paste, but I'm going to use Control X to cut out the shape, Control V to paste it back in. Don't worry, it never seems to paste the section back where we removed it from, but we need to resize it, so it's not a great problem anyway. And of course that cut and paste pasted into a new layer, and if you look over on the right hand side you'll see we now have 3 layers. So I want to resize the center to give it a nice little gap around the outer edge. Now we could spend quite a bit of time and get this gap absolutely pixel perfect. I'm not so certain we actually need it that perfect. I'm going to do it by eye and keep things simple. So to resize that square, I'm going to use my free transform tool. Control T is the shortcut key, and when I hit that you'll see the bounding box appear around the outside edge. I'm going to zoom into this just so I can see it a bit more clearly, because what I want to do is just leave a little gap, something like that. And as you can see, it's not pixel perfect, but I think for demonstration purposes it's going to show you exactly what we've created here. Now when I'm happy with that, I can hit the tick on the options bar. I can pick up my move tool and I can just move this around to make sure it's bang in the middle. So there we have the beginnings of our artwork. But what I'd also like to do is to split this one here in two with a gap down the center, maybe a little bit wider than this, but these things are all creative and going to be personal. So I really need a guide to tell me exactly where the center of my artwork is. Well, Photoshop makes that easy too, because if we just drag one out, get to the center and slow down, you'll see it will snap into position. So what I want to do now is use that rectangular marquee tool again, and I'm going to drag a shape down here. I'm not going to worry about trying to get the size perfect, because once I've got it in place, I'm going to go to Select, Transform. I'll zoom in a little bit, because what I'm looking for is maybe a gap similar to what I've got here. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Control 0 will fit the image back on screen, and when I've got that shape set, I can hit the tick on the options bar. Now here's another tip when you're working with selections. Sometimes we need to use the same selection more than once, but when I apply the selection, sometimes we lose it. So just in case we need this selection again, here's a nice tip. Let's go to the Select menu and choose Save a Selection, and we can give it a name. Let's just call it Vertical Strip for short, and that shouldn't have an E in it, so hit two keys together there. Let's remove that. Vertical Strip, OK. Now when I hit Control S to save my artwork, even if I opened up this artwork tomorrow, I can still retrieve everything we can currently see, including that selection, by simply going back to the Select menu and loading the selection. And we can save more than one selection too. But here what I want to do first is to cut that strip from this particular layer, so I need to select it. Control X will do that. You can see what I mean about the selection now being lost. But I also want to split this into two sections, because I can paste an image here different to here. I can leave it as one, or I can break it up. The choice is mine. Let's break it up on this occasion by just selecting the layer, picking up our rectangular marquee, and just selecting the left hand side. You can see I'm going over the black shape, but it doesn't matter, does it? Because when I turn the background off, I'm picking up everything I need. I'm not selecting anything from the center because we don't have that layer selected. So what I'm going to do here is hit Control X, Edit Cut, and then Control V, Edit Paste. Never paste back in the same position. Pick up the Move tool, and the guides will snap it back into place. But you can see what we've created there in the Layers palette. So we sit back and we look at our artwork, and we start to see that, well, the gap we made here, we didn't pay too much attention to it. It's slightly wider than this one. Is it a big deal? No, probably not. But let's just assume we wanted to change it. It's so easy to do. Just select the shape, zoom in a bit, just to make sure you can see a little more clearly, because all you really need to do is to, I think I went a bit too big then. Let's try just bringing this over a little bit. Let me pick up my hand tool. All we really want is to be able to adjust the square or oblong shape in the middle and just give it slightly more thickness around the edge. So once again, Control T will select it, and we can drag it in a little bit, and that's looking pretty good now. Hit the tick with the move tool. I'll just make sure I've got it perfectly centered there. Control 0. There we have some artwork created. I'll hit Control S again to save over the top of artwork 1. Now, how do we get images into the shapes we have here? Well, I think a good place to start would be to duplicate the artwork we have, or save it with a different name, because we're going to start in a moment or two adding images and then flattening certain layers together, or certainly merging some layers. So we don't want to lose the original artwork, which we may wish to come back to. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save this with just maybe a W at the end, just to tell me that's my working version. So artwork 1 is now safely stored. Artwork 1W I can play around with to my heart's content. So what I need to do is to really locate some images. Here, as you can see, I've brought you into Photoshop's bridge and I've selected 3 images. My thoughts are this one could work quite well in the left hand shape, this one on the right hand shape, and maybe this one as a centerpiece. So I've highlighted all 3. We'll hit the Enter key to open these up into Photoshop. So now I've got 4 tabs at the top of the Photoshop screen because I've got the 3 images that I've just opened and the original artwork. I'm going to start with this image because I want to fit that into the left hand shape. I need to make a selection of it and copy it to my clipboard. And the easiest way to do that is with the universal keyboard shortcut of Control A to select all, and Control C to copy that selection to the clipboard. Then if I go back into my artwork, I can paste it into this left hand shape. If I hold my Control key and click the shape, you can see that it's automatically selected. So what we've got sitting on the clipboard is the image. We've identified the shape that we want Photoshop to paste the image into. So now, Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into. Now the first thing you'll notice, of course, is it's like looking through a tiny letterbox. And the reason we've got this mismatch of resolution is because we've created a piece of artwork at the size we want to create a slideshow, yet we've just pasted into that a full-size image from a 20 megapixel camera. Well, I like that technique because it gives me scope. Let me explain what we need to do next. There's the layer that we're currently working on, the picture we've just pasted in. So I can use the free transform tools that we've used before to now change the size of that image. Control T will bring them up on screen. Because the image is so big, I can't see the edge of the bounding box I need to get to. So here's another shortcut. Control 0 always fits an image on screen, but as you can see here, it also fits the bounding box on screen. So that's very useful. If I hold the Shift key and drag a corner toggle, I can change the size of that image and I can keep it in register. We don't have to work with the image this small now. Once I've got the size brought to this sort of level, if I hit Control 0 again, you can see we've got a little more scope now. So hold the Shift key, drag in the size. If I want to get the maximum in, then I need to get the bounding box close to the edge. But now I've got the opportunity to move things around and decide which part I want to show. If I wanted it to be right on the edge, I can do that. If I wanted it to be slightly over, I can do that too. When I'm happy, I can hit the tick on the options bar, and there's the first image pasted in. Now let's finish this off quickly by doing the other two. Let me select the right hand piece of artwork while I'm here, holding the control key and clicking, so I'm making my selection before I go back to my images, and in fact I can close this image down now, I don't need it. So the one I want is this one for the right hand side, so remember what we did, Control A, Control C, I can go back into my artwork, edit, paste special, paste into. Control T to set up the free transform tool. Control 0 to fit the image on screen. Hold the shift key, resize, Control 0 again, and now I can fine tune what I want to show of the image on the right. I think I'll move it to the right, and you can see the scope we have here. I can show more of that tree. So we've got a nice little layout of a tree both sides, hitting the enter key to commit that change. And now let's quickly do the last one. I'll select it, Control click to select that shape. Let me go back here and get rid of that one, select this one, Control A, Control C, paste into, and once again Control T, Control 0. You can see how useful these keyboard shortcuts are, and they are quick to be remembered. Just put them on a piece of paper in front of you and you'll soon get into them. Control 0 again so we can see what we're doing, and of course we need to avoid anything like that, but I've got the scope here to position this more or less where I want it. And there's the basis of perhaps 3 images for our slideshow. Now I'll get rid of that final picture as well, and I've just saved over the top of my artwork 1W, so everything I've got here is nice and safe. Now before I save the images for use in a slideshow, I'd like to add a degree of style. But it's not so easy to apply styles when we're working with masks, and the masks of course are created by the paste into process. But because we've saved this as a separate version to the previous, what we can do now is we can merge the parts of the images together. So let's take the artwork and the image for the center, just select the 2 layers by holding the control key, right click, and just ask Photoshop to just merge those 2 layers together. Then the left hand artwork and its image, and we'll do the same, and with the right hand one. And of course we don't have to use white as our background. I'll keep it white just to keep things simple, but as you probably know, any shade, any color and any texture. But what I'd like to do is to add some style. So let's pick up the shape on the left, go down the bottom, pick up the effects. I'll bring up the blending options. I'm going to choose first of all a drop shadow. There you see it pop out around the edge. If I highlight this area, I can adjust where the drop shadow comes out, maybe bottom right. I can increase the shadow width and length by just using the sliders or over typing the values. I can increase the intensity. We've got all of these options available to us. I've also got the opportunity to add a thin stroke line, but here it's come up in white, which doesn't look very attractive. I think if we choose black instead of white, and particularly if we put these lines on the inside of the image and drop them down to a nice delicate 2 or 3, well, there you can see that's looking pretty attractive. Now at the moment my guides are getting in the way just a little bit, so I think I'll remove them so you can see the effect we're creating here a bit more clearly. Now to remove the guides, you just go back to the view menu and choose remove guides. If I turn off the other sections of this for the moment, you can see how attractive that shape can look. And to get the effects onto the other shapes is pretty easy. There we can see them, a stroke and a drop shadow. So once we're happy we've got a setting we can live with, we can tuck them away if we want to tidy up the layers. But I can easily copy those effects to the other two layers we need to save, just by holding my Alt key, click and drag, and click and drag. And there's the artwork created. Now what I'd like to do is to save my artwork in sections. I've got some options here. I could have the center image coming up first. Maybe we could make that a feature with a title. I could have both those sections coming up first, and once again perhaps we could make the open area in the middle a feature for a title. Or I can have each of them coming up one at a time. So it would make good sense, I think, to save this layer, then this layer, then both of those together, then this one on its own, and also all three of them. Now there's going to be, or this could be, just a little bit tedious, so perhaps we can even speed this up. The file I'm currently working on here is a Photoshop file, and I've got it saved into the folder of the slideshow that I'm making. So once I've got all of my styles applied to them, I will make sure that I save it for the final time. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to set up a simple JPEG save action. Now I may as well start off by saving the left hand one to start with, so I'll turn the other two layers off and we'll record our action and save the right hand shape first. In fact, I don't know why it's bothering me, but let's switch them around. So we always go from left to right, so let's save the left one first. So you can see how I've set up the layers. I'm going to go to my Windows menu and bring up my actions. There they are over here. Now you may see loads of actions in here, but you can always remove them. You can drag them into the bin. Always get them back. If we go here, I'm going to go to New Set. I'm going to call this my Paste Into. OK. And within the set, because all I've done is created a folder, within the set I'm going to create a new action. We'll call this Save. We know it's going to be a JPEG. It's going to put it into the right set. I want a function key to do this, something easy and quick to find on the keyboard. Well, let's have a look at F8. F8 looks good. I can even add a color if I want to, but I'm not sure we really need to worry too much about that. All we need to do now is click record. We get a little record light come on at the bottom of the layers palette, and then we need to go through exactly what we want Photoshop to record, because it's a repetitive thing we're going to be doing, and we want Photoshop to take up most of the strain for us. So of course let's go and do what we want to record with Photoshop. File, Save As. There's our Paste Into Technique folder, so we're going into the right place. I'm going to save this as a JPEG. I'm going to give it a name, but we'll deal with the name in a moment. I'm going to call this one 001. Save. I'm going to use a quality of 6. I'm going to click OK. That's all we want the action to do. So I can now stop the action and it's safely stored. Now we have a problem, because if I run this action with the F8 key, sure enough it's going to save whatever I've got turned on in the layers, but it's going to save it as 001. Well, that's not going to be any good for us in a slideshow. We need to be able to change the name each time. So if we just click here, what we're saying to this little action here is to say to Photoshop, well, run the action, but just pause and let me give it a name. So I can tuck my actions away now. They don't need to be on screen. So I'm going to turn this one off, this one on, and I'm going to hit my F8 key. and there you can see what happens. It stopped at the crucial point. Even the file name is highlighted, so I don't even have to go over there to highlight it. I can use my number keys 002, enter commits the JPEG, enter commits the quality. It's as easy as that. So if I want to have two together to give myself some scope, F8, 003, enter, enter. And of course we may want this one too, F8, where am I up to, 004, enter, enter. And any other variations that you want, if you just want the center image in place, then do that one too. Photoshop really does make this sort of work very easy for us. It's also creative, as you can see. It does teach us quite a bit about layers, and it can give us a unique presentation effect for a pictures to axis slideshow. But of course, now we need to think where we're going to go next with the shapes, because if we can, we want to try to have the shapes linked to one another in some way. What I'm going to do temporarily here is just remove those effects for a moment, just so we can look at this in a similar way as we did at the start. Because what I'd like to do with this shape is to stretch this out so that it runs up to the top. So we turn this into a triptych. It does mean we've got to trim the image on the right and the left, but now we've got the artwork set up, it should be pretty easy to do. Let me start by flooding that image in the center with black again, so we see it as we saw it before. If I just lock the layer, I can use the Alt backspace, and there you can see we're flooded with black. Need to remove the lock because I'm going to use the free transform tools to stretch this up and down. So once again, edit, free transform, or Control T. There's the bounding box. Now what we want to do is just rise up to the top and let it snap into position with the guides that I've put back. Hit the tick and we're done. What we need to do with the left and right shape is to make a selection right down this right hand edge here. So let's select the shape on the right first. I'll pick up my rectangular marquee tool. Whoops, that's the wrong tool. Control D. Rectangular marquee tool was what I wanted. Click and drag. Now I'm not even going to try to get it along the edge there. Once I've got it in place, I'm going to go to that select menu, transform the selection, and then Control spacebar brings up the zoom tool, so I can zoom in very, very close and drop that right onto that spot there. Commit it with the tick. Now I've got the shape. Let me get rid of that out of the way. Let me get this one out of the way. Now you can see exactly what we're going to cut away here. Control X. There's the shape that I was looking for, and of course I can lock it and flood it with black as before. So there's two parts of our triptych. All we need to do now is the third part. Same method, just draw a selection, select, transform, zoom in, get it right on the edge, and that looks pretty good. Control 0 once again. I'll get these out of the way again because they do get in the way of what we're viewing. Control X will take away that selection if I select the right layer, and then locking the layer and flooding it with black. There's the next stage of my artwork for my slideshow, and I can place now images in there using the paste into technique exactly the same as before, not forgetting of course the styles too. Then using exactly the same techniques we've used before with the paste into and adding the edge styles, and also that quick and simple action to be able to save a variety of images, I've got quite a few already building up in a folder ready to put my slideshow together. Now, putting the slideshow together in Pictures to Exe is pretty easy because each section is a separate JPEG, but it does leave us with quite a degree of creative scope. Let me press preview and we'll just take a look at this little demonstration to show what I mean. I've chosen to use both sections to be able to give myself a space for a title, which will be replaced by the center. Now we can change the outer images and leave the center, or vice versa, but I'm going to use the triptych I created, but use a different fade where I'm taking the gates from the outside in, and then I can change the outer images again and not the center, or change the shape of the center. I can do almost anything my heart desires. It's just that creative thought that we need to give to our slideshow. This presentation was created as part of an audio-visual set of videos designed to look at improved presentation of our slideshows. I provided so many HD videos that the downloadable file became just a little bit large. So I've separated this video and I'm offering this as a sample of my video quality, the size of the videos, and also my tutorial style. If you've enjoyed this video and you're watching on YouTube, you will find a link to the rest of the videos in this set below. If you've downloaded this video to your own PC and you want to find the remainder of the videos in this set, come to my website and you can see the address at the top left, www.beckhamdigital.com.au, and go to the Pictures to Exe menu.